was May 10th that my husband Marcel died quite suddenly of a brain aneurysm. And I think through it all, the only thing that was clear is that I had to do what Marcel had asked me to do when he was dying. Apart from that, I felt very numb. It was, use your left foot, use your right foot. I just followed what anybody had to say. I don't remember much of it.
I lost my wife in a traffic accident about 8 months ago. Coming home from work late at night. There's questions on how the accident happened, but in my mind, I pretty well know that she was in a rush and paid for it, or we're paying for it, whichever way you want to word it.
My wife, Brenda, passed away March 13th. She had a very long and difficult illness, many, many years. So she had been in hospital for almost a year prior to her passing. In many ways, it was a blessing.
My husband died 13 months ago, 13 months and 6 days. We were married actually for 20 years, but we were together for almost 25. He was only sick for 5 weeks before he died, so it was unexpected.
When she passed away in hospital, it was difficult in the sense because I had to tell the people and the doctors and nurses to stop care and let her go. That was a tough thing to do. I don't wish that on anyone.
The hardest thing for me in all this has been that we didn't get to say goodbye. I had a 9:30 at night phone calls telling me that she was on her way back to the house, and I was mad because she was so late. And it was one of those whatever kind of thing, and hung up the phone, and that was how we finished our life.
On one level, I knew that he was dead and went through all the motions that you go through, the physical motions of preparing. And I remember being in a daze. I don't think I really started to fully accept his death probably for 3 months.
I know I was crying a lot. I was uncontrollable that way. Many, many times I'd just be crying.
In my case, I went back to work. Well, in fact, I went to work the following day. Because what are you going to do? Sit around the house and watch the clock go around and around? Well, you know, there's people hanging around the house. At least for the 2 or 3 hours I went into work the following day, I could focus on something besides what happened back home.
And I remember feeling I didn't want to see anybody but the family. When somebody would call, I didn't want to answer the phone. I just wanted to isolate myself at home with the children, and that went on for quite a while.
You find out quickly that everybody leads their own life. You find out quickly who your true friends are, people that come around and say hello, or just come around and be there, or knock on the door and say, here's supper. Other people seem to fade away, and for whatever reason, maybe they don't know or don't understand what to do and what to say, so they stay away.
There are certain things you can't talk to your buddies about. Those are things that you could only talk to your wife about. And of course, without her being there, what do you do? In my case, she was my best friend, and she was my support.
I got through those first days after his death, one day at a time. I couldn't think. I got through the morning, then I got through the night. One day at a time. Sometimes it was an hour at a time. After the funeral is over, for many people, it's easy for them to turn around and to move on. And I heard, even 2 weeks after my husband's death, people were saying, you have to just pick up and move on. You're still a young woman. I'm sure you'll meet somebody. I hadn't even accepted he was dead.
There were very many scenarios where people would come up and say, you know, don't worry, things are going to get better, be strong. All those cliches. Well, I know they meant well. I know I found that very annoying, and I found that very unhelpful in the sense that they were trying to say or do something to ease your pain, ease your grief, and none of that helped.
After Marcel died, I leaned an awful lot on my children. In their love for me, they attempted to do everything they could that would make it a little easier for me. And at first, I was so grateful for that. But as time went on, I care for that less and less, because I found out about myself that I want to be independent. And it's been a little testy every once in a while in that way. But I feel if ever I'm going to complete this journey, then I had to take charge of my own life.
It's amazing what some of the statements that people say and how little they help. Well, the one that kills me all the time is, of course, well, you had her this length of time, that's one. The other one is, well, now you can live through your kids. Well, I'm not sure about everyone, but in my case, I love my children, but I don't live through my children. Where she stopped and I began over the last 24 years has really become fuzzy. So trying to find that boundary is a little bit difficult now, but that's who I lived through. So, and that was who or how we had planned to live the rest of our lives.
Christmas was very, very difficult. Mel had died in July, so it was 6 months. Because my children were not my husband's children, my oldest daughter could not understand my grief at all. And for them, 6 months had passed. For me, it was the very first Christmas without my husband, and even my parents could not relate to how much pain I was experiencing. And I found myself trying to put on a happy face, as I didn't want to ruin anybody else's Christmas.
My message to people out there, especially men, is that all those guards and those defenses, they all serve a purpose, and you need them at times, but there's times when you have to let them go. And if you lock them up, they just eat at you.
I always want to talk about Marcel, how it happened. I told that story over and over and over to many people. And sometimes I wondered if I was losing it. But as I look back, I think that that was helpful. I don't have to do that now, but that was helpful at the time.
It would have been so helpful if more people would have reached out to me. And that would have included stopping in unexpectedly. Most of the time I said I wanted to be alone, but the truth is I needed people.
What did help was just to have somebody with you, have somebody close by, maybe someone just sharing time and space with you, but not necessarily doing anything or talking to you saying, what can I do? They were just there.
Nobody knew how to respond to me. And one person said, I'll be sure we get out together for lunch. I never heard from him. Another one said, I would have gone out for lunch with you. All you had to do was call. What I learned from that experience was people expect the griever to reach out. I couldn't reach out. And here I was at 4 months finally having the courage to reach out and ask for help. And again, none of these people had lost a spouse. They did not understand. And so I learned you don't make the griever work.
When people offer, it is genuine. In a lot of cases, they may not know what you need, and you have to tell them that. They're not going to figure it out on their own. And I literally had to tell them in a lot of cases, just because they didn't get it, or they didn't figure it out. And it wasn't because they weren't willing to go there. It was because they're not in the same place you are, so they don't have the ability to understand what you're asking. So you need to actually ask for help.
One thing that did help was I followed the list from the hospital where they gave you a list to do. And I'm a person where I can be very disciplined. And because of that, I just followed the list and took action and did those things as a checklist, one after another. And that was helpful.
I made sure that I get away and take a break, like away out of the city. I go for walks. I got myself a dog, and that was one of the best things I did for me, because I needed something to love when I went home.
The relationships that you have with people, whether it's at work or whether it's at home, socially and that, they do change.
After being married for 25 years, having to adjust to being single, number one, at my age, I'm in my early 50s, I never in a million years expected to be a widow. We had all these plans, all these dreams, and all of a sudden I found myself planless and dreamless.
As the months went by, I remember that some of the immediate pain that you have with the loss, it was being replaced by what I called monotonous emptiness. It just never left you. It was the same day after day. And at times that emptiness would just swallow you.
As a person that's alone, all of a sudden, doors aren't quite open to you anymore. People don't know how to handle a single person or an older person that you as a couple were always involved in.
In my social circle, people had a hard time approaching me, especially our friends that were our friends because my husband and I were a couple. The couples didn't get a hold of me, didn't contact me, didn't invite me over. They are having a hard time accepting that Mel and I are no longer a couple, that there is no Mel.
In my case, my social life has been substantially on hold. And the reason is that you're trying to keep some normalcy for your kids. So it's tough to join a club. It's tough to get into any kind of groups where you can interact with adults, because you can't commit to anything because, well, tonight your kids have skating or they've got hockey or they've got whatever. That's the end that I probably got to work on the most, and get some kind of personal social life. Just to be able to do something other than sit around the house, because at night after the kids are in bed, it gets a little bit quiet and a little bit lonely.
I have grandchildren who have asked me, Grandma, will you be always married to Grandpa? And I said, yes, I will always be married to Grandpa. I feel that I am very married to Grandpa, and I know when I put his wedding band on the finger next to mine, it is a sign that Marcel is married to me, and I am married to him, and that will be always.
At this time right now, yeah, I'm still married to Laura. She may not be here, but I'm still here. And I still said the words. But I would expect that down the road that will change. I sure hope it does anyway. It's a long time to live all by yourself.
I took off my wedding ring shortly after Mel died. And it was really a difficult decision to make, to take off my ring. And I took it off because every time I looked at my finger, I cried. And I took off my ring, not because I didn't want to be married anymore, simply because it was so painful to see it on my finger. So for me, taking it off was a choice of a kind of a survival technique at the time.
I wanted to have the closets cleaned out of Marcel's things. I told my daughter, I have to do this, so come with me. And she led me to the bedroom door, and I fainted. It was so hard. But when I came to, I still wanted to do that. So children came with me and they packed Marcel's clothes.
And the question is, what do you do with all these mementos? Well, some I've kept, and I've just packaged up these other clothing, knowing that they're going to go to the Salvation Army and go to other organizations that can use them, because that's what Mel would want. And I tried to do it at 6 months. I tried to do it at 9 months. I was able to do it at 13 months. It was just time.
But I didn't have that feeling inside of me that I need to keep everything. All that I felt for Marcel was in my heart and would remain there.
Brenda and I talked about those type of things, about her belongings, what to do with her clothes, her things, and she did designate that most of her clothing and different things would go to her sisters, go to my sister. We did talk about things like that, and I found that very helpful, very useful. I would really recommend that, because otherwise you're lost at what do you do with this world of her things.
There's days when you come home and you go, you didn't even think of Laura, or not the way you were before. And then there's that little voice in the back of your head saying you're forgetting her. But I'll never forget Laura. Sometimes I pick it up in things I see the kids do, of course. There's certain characteristics that each one of them has that come directly from her.
At the end of a year after Marcel died, a tree was planted in Fish Creek Park in his memory. And it's a good feeling to see something that's alive that is Marcel, because he was so alive.
She left a lot of legacies. She left a series of over 45 picture albums of our life together. A lot of her friends, because they knew her passion for gardening and for shrubs and flowers, they brought flowers and we planted them around the house and around the yard. So I'm staying connected by keeping those plants watered and alive. She also put together this friendship tablecloth that anytime people came to our home and had dinner with us, had a meal with us, we had them sign a tablecloth, and we had probably 30 years of that. So we have people's signatures, their drawing, and she would crochet that. So we have those tablecloths and those memories and those friends and people that came and visited us from all over the world. So looking back, there's a lot of connections that she left me.
I spent the day with a realtor. I was fed up. Last thing I wanted to do was buy a house. But I just said, I'm going to get this townhouse. Let's hurry up and get it over with. She said, look at one more house with me. And we went to this house, and I walked up to the stairs thinking, oh, this is better than I thought. And I went up, and I went down, and I went up, and I stood in the middle of this house, and I said, Mel, is this the one? And I heard, yes! There's no question in my mind that he has stayed connected with me.
Right now, yeah, the relationship is still there. It's not what it was. It's not what it'll end up being, but it's somewhere in the transition. What direction and what advice would she give me? I know right off the bat the first thing she'd say would be the same thing that I would say. Is if it had been me that passed away, is, you know, get on with your life and enjoy life. Don't get locked up in depression and sadness and all the rest of that stuff, because that wouldn't be what she ever wanted. On the other hand, easy to say, much harder to do.
And I have changed a lot of things around our home and yard since Marcel died. And sometimes I just have to talk to him, tell him I'm sorry. I had to cut a lot of branches off the spruce tree, and it was both healing for me, and I had this feeling Marcel would say, that's good. If that makes you feel good, that's good.
I think if Brenda was here, she'd just want me to be happy. And try and stay healthy and be happy. That's all.
People had kept saying to me, you know, move on. You have to, you have to have closure. And what I learned is there is no closure, but you turn a page. And so this is the story of my life. This is one of the chapters. And until the day I die, the book won't be closed. There won't be closure. But I've turned a page.